Okay, 10th grade, this is our first real lesson of our new unit on physiology and homeostasis. So here is your template for today. There's going to be three main sections. There's going to be talking about what homeostasis is with one particularly complex diagram to draw with an example in here, and then we'll talk about what feedback loops are, review that, and look at some examples from physiology. And then you're going to do a virtual lab, and there's 4 questions to answer here. So pause the video, take a minute, and draw your template. If you're doing this digitally, then you just need to have the subtitles and title and organize your notes now before we get started. Okay, so hopefully now you have your notes organized and we get to the lesson. So first things first, what is homeostasis? So homeostasis means happening in all of our bodies all the time, and not just in humans, but in all organisms. They're trying to maintain homeostasis. The level of complexity of the process for them varies organism to organism, but in general, what it means is that the organism is trying to maintain a variety of what are called physiological variables, so things that can vary inside the organism's body, so their physiology, at a specific value, and that would be the set point. So a set point is the value at which they're trying to maintain those particular variables. Okay, so an example of a physiological variable, so as we call that the stimulus in terms of homeostasis, is blood glucose level. So that would be how much glucose is in the blood of the organism. For example, in humans, if that gets to be too high or too low, you could be a diabetic and have problems with your blood glucose levels, and that can cause severe problems. It can cause eye issues, it can cause leg issues. Diabetics often need to take insulin or maintain very specific glucose levels with a diet that helps them only take in so much glucose at once, because their body can't maintain homeostasis for them. Okay, so that's one example of set point. I want you to pause the video and think about how many other various physiological variables you can think of. How many other things in your body is it trying to maintain at a specific set point, at a certain value? So pause the video and try and come up with at least 4 different examples. Okay, so hopefully you paused the video, and here are some other ones. So the pH of your blood is something that your blood is going to maintain at a certain level. You have the carbon dioxide and oxygen levels, which we deal with as part of respiration. We have temperature, of course. If you get to be too hot because your body's sick, you're fighting off, you're going to get a fever because you're fighting off some sort of illness. Or you get too cold, that's also bad. So we have a set value for temperature, ventilation rate, so how quickly you're breathing, heart rate, your blood pressure, the water and nutrient levels inside the organism. Do we have enough water? Do we not drink enough water? Is there too much water? How much do we have enough of every nutrient? Enough calcium, enough iron, enough zinc? Do we have the right levels of hormones? Of course, it's going to be different in males and females and at different points in their life. And of course, energy levels. Do we have enough energy to kind of accomplish the task we're trying to accomplish? So what you need to do now is take a minute and draw this diagram. This is when you have to draw it, and make sure you write the words exactly how they are. Okay, so pause the video and go ahead and draw this diagram. So, to continue, let's talk about how we maintain homeostasis. So to maintain it, we have to be constantly collecting information. We can't just assume our body's at a good level for whatever variable it happens to be, whether it's oxygen or glucose. We have to constantly collect information about the various stimuli and the levels they are at, and then compare them to set point, and the body will have to adjust if needed. So let's say you have too much water, it will have to get more dilute urine and excrete that water. If it's not enough water, it will more concentrate the urine, and you'll have to retain the water into the body. It's going to adjust them as needed to see how close they are or how far they are from set point. So if we look at this diagram you guys just drew, here is the variable. Let's say it's water or blood glucose, and it can be either too high or too low. So too low over here, too high over here. Either one is bad. It needs to be at that set point, at the ideal kind of balanced level. So the control center up here is how we're going to control and keep track of where the body's at for these various variables. So which organ systems or which body systems do you think are involved in controlling levels? Well, there's two, the brain and the endocrine system. So that's nervous system and the endocrine system. So the brain is the most important one. It's going to gather all that information from the nerves all over the body, and then it will send signals based on that information to different effectors. So effectors are things that can react to the brain signal. So there's several different types. It could be an organ. For example, the kidney will adjust how much water it is allowing to go out in the urine based on how much water the body needs to keep inside of it. The pancreas will react to different blood levels or different blood glucose levels. It could be a nerve, some nerves telling your heart rate to increase or decrease. It could also be a gland, like we have different glands in our body that produce hormones we need. So, for example, the testes are going to produce testosterone. Maybe that level needs to increase because a boy is about to go through puberty and they need to change that level. So something is happening and needs to maintain a certain level of those things. The body responds to what the control center is sending a signal to an effector. Okay, that effector will then cause that change, that response that we just talked about. Maybe we're taking up more water from the urine. Maybe we are secreting insulin to take in more, to store sugar longer in the cells in the body, so we have too much blood sugar. Whatever it happens, there's something happening that's reacting. Then that change, to see where we're at, we're going to compare where we're at now to set point. Did we go lower? Did we go higher? Are we better, closer to our set point than before? Will be measured by a receptor. So your body has a ton of different kinds of receptors, and examples would be a chemoreceptor on a specific organ that would detect the levels of some sort of variable. And your body will then react to that and send that information back to the control center. So the control center will then say, okay, am I close to set point? Am I at set point? If I'm at set point, I don't have to send any more signals. I'm good to go. Just keep checking to make sure I'm at set point or not. If I'm not quite there yet, I'll send out more signals to the effectors again, and they'll keep doing what they're doing to try and get us back to that perfectly even set point value. So the body is doing this all the time. It's kind of amazing how it's constantly collecting data on all of these variables and checking to make sure we're at set point. And if we're not at set point, it's going to adjust, going to try and change things to see how it's going. Okay, so a really good example of this is thermoregulation. So we're regulating the temperature inside the body. So what I want you to do is look at this diagram, pause the video, and try to analyze it yourselves. Okay, so what do you see? What is happening? And identify what's the control center for thermoregulation, what's the effector, what's the receptor, and what is the stimulus. Okay, so hopefully you've paused now and thought of this for a few minutes by yourself. And you'll notice if the temperature of the set point is between 35.6 and 37.8 degrees Celsius, if it gets too high, the stimulus is this increase in temperature, and that will go to the hypothalamus in the brain. That is my control center. That will then send a signal to my effector, which would be the blood vessels, the nerves, and sweat glands. They're going to dilate to allow the heat to leave the skin more easily, and so there's a sweat to help cool us down. So when sweat happens, your body is sweating, releasing that water onto your surface of your skin, and then when that water evaporates, it takes the heat with it, and that's how sweat works to cool you down. Okay, and then we have the different receptors taking in that information, checking, is the temperature decreased, and it says, is it decreased enough to be at homeostasis? If it's not, it'll go back, send the signal again, and keep doing these things until the temperature goes down enough to get us back to homeostasis. Now, what happens if we get too cold, if it's the opposite thing happening here? If the body temperature decreases, maybe it's wintertime and you're outside, maybe you got really wet, and then a cold wind came up, something that's happened, and you got to be cold. So your hypothalamus will collect that data from your body, from receptors, and send information to your different cells. Your blood vessels will constrict, they'll get smaller to prevent heat loss, and this gets even more so at the extremities, at your fingers, at your toes, your ears, your nose. Those parts that are not as vital to your body are going to get colder quicker. Your body is choosing to keep the core of your body, where your internal organs are, try to keep them as warm as possible. It will also send signals to your skeletal muscles and cause you to start shivering. And that shivering motion is involuntary, and it helps get you heated up again to a certain point. Then the various receptors will take in that data and check what's my temperature now, send information back over here, and if I'm warm enough, great, it'll stop. If I'm not warm enough, it'll keep going until it gets hot enough and I'm back to set point. Okay, so a summary of that should go into the first page of your template, along with a drawing of the previous kind of generalized diagram. If you like this diagram too, you can draw it or find it online and put your notes. But it's good. Thermoregulation is a classic example to think about because it's something everyone can understand. Everyone has gotten too hot or too cold. You can really notice those different reactions. Okay, so let's talk about feedback loops. So we talked about this in our climate change unit. I want you to pause the video and think about what is a feedback loop. Can you remember? So hopefully the feedback loop is where we're going to have some sort of positive or negative response, either a stimulus that's causing the loop to continue, like this one, or causing the loop to adjust back to some sort of normal, like this one. I use the same pictures from our previous unit to hopefully help trigger your memory. This positive and negative feedback loops, what's the difference? Pause and think about it for a second. So hopefully remember, a positive feedback loop is where the result is causing it to increase more. So more panic, if panic level is increasing, more cattle will run. More cattle will run, causing panic to increase more. This is positive, it's getting more and more and more. It's self-perpetuating, self-continuing, kind of like a domino effect, getting more and more and more. A lot of climate change feedback loops are positive feedback loops, which is why it's not a good thing. A negative feedback loop is like this one, like thermoregulation, where if we get too hot, we try to cool down. If we get too cold, we try to heat up. We're trying to maintain sort of normal value, and we have two options to get back to that. We can go too far above it or too far below it, and then we try to come back to that kind of normal value. Okay, so which of those two kinds of feedback loops is more common in the human body, and why do you think that is? So the more common one is a negative feedback loop because the body's trying to maintain most things at set point with a certain kind of value. You want to maintain that for physiological variables, and it's not very often that we need to go up, keep something going more and more. It does happen, but not nearly as often as negative feedback loops. Okay, so just in case you need to have a formal definition of feedback loops, this is the one I gave you for climate change unit. A feedback loop is a system of interactions in which the output or outputs either inhibit or amplify the system. So in a positive feedback loop, it's going to be amplifying the system, making it more and more extreme. In a negative feedback loop, it's going to be inhibiting the system to try and bring it back to set point. Okay, so let's look at some examples. So here's one example, a physiological example. During lactation, when the baby suckles on the nipple, there is a nerve response into the spinal cord and up into the hypothalamus part of the brain, which then stimulates the pituitary gland to produce more prolactin, which is a hormone, to produce more milk. So this is positive or negative feedback loop, and why? Pause and think about it. So this is a positive feedback loop because as we have lactation happening, there's more of that signal sending out more, which causes it to produce more milk. So if the suckling on the nipple makes more milk happen, it's getting more and more extreme. And this is what happens with some mothers if they can't nurse their baby at the beginning for some reason. Maybe they were sick, something happened, they can lose their milk. You can't do this all the time, only when you have the right hormones. And if you don't have this positive feedback loop signal happening, then you can lose the ability to produce breast milk. Okay, here's another one. This is in the blood system. So the artery walls are going to stretch in the presence of high blood pressure. Receptors are called baroreceptors. They're going to also stretch. And as a result, a signal is sent to the brain, which in turn slows down the heart rate. This slows the flow of blood through the arteries, causing less pressure. As the blood pressure drops, the baroreceptors become flaccid, and a signal is sent to speed up the heart rate. So pause and think about this, positive or negative, and why. Okay, so hopefully you got that this one is a negative feedback loop, because I'm going both above and below and trying to maintain a specific set point. So when it became too high blood pressure, then it slowed down the heart rate, which caused less pressure, and then it started to speed up the heart rate. So it's trying to maintain a certain level of blood pressure and heart rate. So negative. Okay, and the last example to analyze here, we have the biochemical pathway. When you cut yourself, you have blood clotting happening. When this happens, you have a enzyme being produced called thrombin, and that's going to cause a protein, I guess, called fibrinogen to become what's called fibrin. And fibrin is going to make these little like mesh fibrin fibers that will then help hold your blood cells and platelets together to make a blood clot. So this has what's called a self-accelerating effect. So once you start to clot, it will continue to happen faster and faster until the bleeding stops. When the bleeding stops, a different signal comes along and tells your body to stop producing fibrin and just let it go. So is this positive or negative? Think about it for a second. This is another positive feedback loop because we're getting more and more in this process, more and more clotting is happening until it's completed its task, and a different signal has to come along to tell it to stop blood clotting. Okay, so that should be all your notes on the feedback loops. We're now going to talk about the virtual lab assignment. So you're going to do an actual individual lab later on this week, but for now we're going to start the virtual lab. And you're going to explore multiple variables at once. In this case, you're going to actually be exploring 5 different variables for one individual. So I really recommend you do this with somebody. Maybe you Zoom together and you put the simulation on someone's shared screen and you can talk about what's happening and answer the questions. There's 4 questions to answer based on what's happening, and you'll see how you can maintain the levels to maintain homeostasis for this particular individual. Okay, so here's what it will look like. The link is on Schoology as well as in the post for this lesson, and you have to maintain their heart rate, respiration, blood pressure, perspiration, and blood sugar levels. So the person will tell you if they're feeling sick like this, you're not doing a good job. Some things have gotten too low and they're not healthy. So change the levels, increase or decrease it to make this a better level for that person to maintain homeostasis. This one, temperature is perfect. It's green, it's decreased temperature, no perspiration happening, and we're at a good temperature. Glucose is a little bit low, and blood deliveries or blood heart rate and respiration are way too high, and it's making them sick. Okay, so here are the 4 questions you have to answer. How does each variable, which would be heart rate, respiration, blood pressure, perspiration, and blood sugar, change based on the individual's actions? So running versus at rest, the 2 options here. Only 2, running versus if they're resting. Why is heart rate so connected to respiration and blood pressure? Identify the type of feedback loop for each physiological variable, and is the body ever truly in equilibrium? Why or why not? So just to show you how this works, here's a simulation. It gives you a little bit of feedback information you can read, and then you're going to start, and you have this person who's not feeling very good. So my heart rate is too low, so I'm going to increase the heart rate. Oh, that's good. But my respiration is way too low. So the increase, that's not helping, so let's try the other way. Okay, that's better. Now blood pressure is a little bit too high. Oh, I have to increase the dilation. And now this one, blood delivery, is also too high. Bring her back. So you're going to keep playing with this until you get everybody at set point. There. Oh, not quite. So you keep doing this until you get the... There. Now she's healthy and she's going to start running. So everything changed when she started to run, and now I have to adjust again. So you can just play around with this, and you can pause it to see what's happening and take a point and look at your data you have here. Okay? It's not quite as easy as it looks. So what you need to submit to this post for me by the end of the day, I think make it due Thursday morning. I'll double check my just about Thursday morning, let you guys know. Is you're gonna have to upload all of your notebook pages. So it's 2 pages of your notebook, or if you did digital notes, you have to upload a PDF or a screenshot of your digital notes. And that should include the 4 questions. You can work with somebody else, but you should have your own wording in your answer. Okay, but I do recommend you work with somebody else just to kind of talk through the process. Okay, so this is your homework. I'll post the due date on Schoology. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, and good luck.